Alabama's 2026 transfer class is one of the most talked about cycles in recent memory because it reflects a shift in how the Tide are approaching roster construction. After losing a surprisingly large number of contributors, particularly on defense, some in the wide receiving room and along the offensive line, to the portal this winter, Alabama staff has had to pivot quickly and plug holes and add depths. Some fans see the class as solid and strategically targeted. Others feel Alabama blew opportunities and came up short in key areas. Let's unpack all of that in an honest eval of Alabama's portal class. Stick around. This is Way Offsides. Hey, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever the case may be. No intro today. Why? Well, because some of you don't watch past the intro. So we're going to try to do it without it. Looking at the analytics, all that stuff. Hey, if you're new here, real quick, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, do all the things, helps grow the channel, keeps the channel free for you and everybody else. Why not join the Way Offsides family? Be the best decision you make in 2026. We're going to talk about this portal class today, and I'm going to give you guys a no BS, honest evaluation of what I think and how I think the staff did. Now, I want to start off by saying, ultimately, I feel like there's promise. You've heard me say this before. There's promise in that Alabama came out of the Rose Bowl loss, an embarrassing, abysmal Rose Bowl loss, and the staff immediately went to work on fixing clear and present issues with Alabama's 2025 squad. Right. I do fully believe that some of the departures from Alabama maybe weren't potentially told to leave, but Alabama made it clear we're not going to pay you what you're asking for because you don't produce. So keep that caveat in the back of your mind while we talk about this. And we'll start with the good. Now, we're going to go through the good stuff, and then we're going to go through the bad stuff, both sides of the coin, so that you guys get a clear idea of where Alabama lands going in 2026, because there's a bunch of question marks. Ideally, most fans who are on the rational side of the fence are like, I want to wait and see what happens. I have hope that this team's going to be good, but I got to see it first. And that's really where I'm sitting. That's where a lot of people are sitting. But then you have some folks who have already thrown their hands up in the air and said that DeBoer has ruined the entire brand. It's over with. There's no shot at Alabama being competitive ever again. I literally just saw a comment on a short we did where somebody was said it doesn't matter who the starting quarterback is going to be in 2026 because they're just going to ruin them like they've ruined every other quarterback they've worked with. They ideally haven't watched Michael Penix Jr., Jalen Milroe. Yes, he's a backup, but he's in the NFL. I'm not saying that they're wrong, but the sample size is very, very small. So, all right. Impact additions who fill needs, right? That was the name of the game this portal cycle. Alabama actually landed some guys who could confidently talk about in a positive way, right? Specifically along the offensive line. That's where the massive rebuild happened. Obviously, the defensive side saw some additions and some exits, but the offensive line is where the most work needed to be done. And they did that. They made it a priority to build it. It was porous in 2025. They added a few guys. They added Caden Strayhorn, Nick Brooks, who I'm not super sold on, Javen James, obviously Ty Haywood, Ethan Fields. And these additions address some major point from 2025. It's added experience, but Alabama's not banking on that. They're not banking on the Indiana model just yet. Right. Then we had that last year. We had a lot of players who played a lot of football along the offensive line, and it did not work. So Alabama is definitely approaching it differently. Excuse me. I don't think the names pop. Ultimately, I feel like in a way they do absolutely fit the need. You got some guys who are going to be really good in run fits, which is what Alabama needs. That's what they're targeting. That is their biggest area of emphasis. And you go get some guys that you maybe whiffed on before, and like in Ty Haywood. You go get a couple of SEC guys, 3 of them, Nick Brooks, Javen James, Ethan Fields. Fields being a big one from over at Ole Miss, who have SEC experience, right? And how many times have we seen a player be terrible here, go somewhere else, and they're just better? It's a better environment for them. It's a better fit for them. and they just play better. Everybody ragging on Wilkin Formby. I'm not going to be surprised if that dude is one of the best tackles in the country. If he plays tackle, probably going to play guard over at Texas A&M. It's just kind of how the cookie crumbles sometimes. But, honestly, about this offensive line class, it feels better because you needed a change. And it changed. It absolutely changed. There's going to be very few people playing on this line with experience in Tuscaloosa as a Crimson Tide roster holder outside of Michael Carroll. So it's completely rehauled. And there is hope in that the rehaul can absolutely fix some of the issues. It remains to be seen. I'm not going to hype up this offensive line going into the preseason, going into the actual season. I got to wait and see what the competition looks like. But that's the other side of this coin, is that because we know, like, the only guy we know for sure right now that's going to be a starter on this offensive line is Michael Carroll. Everybody else, from Strayhorn, Delgatti, the kids that they've brought in who, have they recruited out of high school, Fields, Haywood, they're all going to have to compete. Alabama didn't necessarily have that competition along its offensive line last season. So we're hoping that will breed better play from whoever the solidified offensive line is. You bring in a new offensive line coach in Clem, and Clem has shown a history of going in and stabilizing offensive lines that typically are rotating a ton of guys. And it's worked. He did it at UCLA. So hopefully that's the game plan here. I still think Alabama potentially could hire a 2-model offensive line coach. We'll see if that happens. But that was the biggest storyline in the portal. And I think Alabama probably a B-, right? The goal was to get better. In a lot of other places, it was to replace production. Along the offensive line, it was 100% to get better. I think that they, based off of what they lost and how that talent produced, and I'm not talking about guys of the draft, I'm talking about the transfer portal guys, I do think that this is a better group. Now, when you start considering guys that left for the draft, Parker Brailsford, Caden Proctor, things like that, I don't know if it's a better group. It remains to be seen on the field, right? Now, what about defensively? Well, the two biggest names defensively that I think Alabama went and got are Devin Tompkins and Caleb Woodson. Tompkins, immediately the USC defensive lineman. He provides length and athleticism on the edge. Had a pretty significant defensive line contribution at USC, and Alabama needed to reload. They lost some surprise pieces to the portal along the defensive line. Obviously, the draft, you're losing guys like LT Overton, blah, blah, blah. Same thing with the linebacker room. I think that bringing in Woodson and Tompkins definitely replaces some of the production that you lost. Now, across the board defensively, that's another big question mark, right? It's hard to say if going and adding Zulu from South Carolina is going to replace some of the production you lost to the transfer portal. That remains to be seen. It's a big question mark. So it's really hard to eval that. It's really hard to go, is it going to be better? You keep some key pieces like Jan Pierre. I think Alabama has had a very inconsistent pass rush, and that is where you saw it in the Rose Bowl. If they couldn't get pressure on Fernando Mendoza, other games all season, they stopped getting pressure on quarterbacks, and quarterbacks could just sit back there, and when Alabama plays zone, they just rip them apart. These are two guys who immediately could come in and kind of provide you a spark. Zulu as well. But does it actually replace the production that you lost? Yeah, it could. It absolutely could. You could make an argument for either. We have to look at guys like Quay Russaw, James Smith. What was the production of those guys? What were they really providing to the team based off of their core value, who they were supposed to be, the expectation? And if we're being honest, it wasn't there. It wasn't there. Keon Keeley was a guy who I think was just starting to get going. That was a big one that kind of stung pretty bad. He's over at Notre Dame now. That's one I would have liked to see Alabama get. There was hope that when he announced his intentions to enter the portal, they were going to try to get him to stay. Did not work out. But I do feel ultimately a couple of these pieces absolutely could replace the minimal talent production that we saw from some of the portal entries. Will it be better? That remains to be seen. And that's as honest as I can be. I want to get excited about Devin Tompkins. I want to get excited about Caleb Woodson. I want to get excited about Umea Zulu. I want to get excited about those guys. But we've seen a ton of five-star talent at Alabama in the past 2 seasons underproduce. What's different that we're going to get out of these guys who maybe don't have the names as a Quay Russaw or a James Smith? So it remains to be seen. I got to see it. And that's as honest as I can be about it. Now, I think Alabama absolutely hit a home run in terms of special teams. They go and get the Irish place kicker. They go and get a new long snapper. Potentially game-changing, we'll see. But definitely special teams unit needed a complete overhaul in terms of personnel. And I think that's the most underappreciated job that Alabama did in the transfer portal that nobody's talking about. This kid, this kicker from Ireland, he is really, really good long range. It's career highs 55 yards, I believe. So it will be very interesting to see. And overall, just talking about the entire portal class, there are some names that you can get excited about, but there's also names that it's hard to get excited about. The Mercer DB, Carmelo O'Neal. Is that good? Is it not good? Racing Delgatti, I am excited about, but is he going to be able to contribute at this level of football compared to playing at Cal Poly? That remains to be seen, right? And I think that's the honest approach. I think that is the most not significant, but the most realistic approach is to sit there and go, let's see it. Let's see what it looks like. They could hit a home run with this portal class. They could have got a couple of first rounders in this portal class. We honestly don't know. They could have gotten a bunch of scrubs in this portal class. We honestly don't know. But that's why people are so upset about missing out on like Cam Coleman, right? Alabama didn't need a Cam Coleman, but a Cam Coleman is a guy you know that you're going to get that's going to produce and going to kind of change your offense. It's going to give your quarterback another weapon immediately, a guy that can come in and be a game changer. So things like that, whiffing on a player like that hurts. And then you add on the Hollywood Smothers incident and what happened there. When everybody kind of thought Alabama needed to go get another running back. Obviously, they thought they did too at one point, and they missed there. And I mean, those are straight Fs. You got to give them an F, especially with the Smothers. I feel like they got played there a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if Coleman was involved in that decision with Smothers, but and then you look at guys like Jacarius Peak, Ross, Jordan Ross, Alabama really, you were hoping that they would be involved with those guys. And they weren't, right? So why did Alabama lose those battles, reputation versus NIL, strategy versus other schools? I think that's a couple of your answers. I think they just lost too. You have to think, let's be honest, and this is hard to say out loud, and I'm not being negative. It's just the national perception right now. When you get beat like you did in the Rose Bowl, and everybody watched that, and including the players and from other schools, and you have Kirk Herbstreit on there talking about how Alabama's just not Alabama anymore, that has an impact on the overall perception of the place, the coaching staff, things like that. That's why I was so pissed about the way he handled that compared to how McElroy handled a dismantling of Oregon. Those things weren't said about Oregon during Oregon's matchup with Indiana. So some of that stuff does play in there. Some of it is NIL. Alabama is much more strategic as opposed to just throwing money around in the portal, and they have to be. I think that their strategy is more focused on high school recruiting and development The scary part of that is it's risky because you can't guarantee that these kids are going to stay. There are no multi-year contracts. There should be, but there aren't any, right? So is it a miss to lose out on a guy like Cam Coleman? Yeah, that's the biggest portal miss of the offseason for Alabama. You got him on campus. You couldn't seal the deal. He ends up over at Texas, who's putting together the freaking Avengers. But at the same time, strategically, with the amount of money that he commands, is it the right choice for Alabama? Probably not. But you're not going to say no to a guy like Cam Coleman if he wants to come take an official visit. Same thing with Smothers. Okay. Big picture for me, what this class says about Alabama strategy is they are looking for smart fits as opposed to star power. They clearly targeted fits over flash. They're looking at linemen with technique, tight ends who can block, wide receivers who can block, defensive linemen who can rotate and are versatile, and mid-level contributors at linebacker and DB. Is this a sign Alabama's prioritizing scheme fit and immediate need over chasing portal stars? Yeah, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. It's a completely different strategy Alabama's going with in terms of the transfer portal as opposed to a lot of other schools. You look at what LSU did in the portal, what Texas A&M, Texas Tech, Texas, of course, all the, big NIL players did in the portal, and it does feel lesser than. But there's a reason it does, and that's because Alabama is just approaching it absolutely different. Absolutely different. They're still focusing on high school recruiting. They've recruited extremely well, exceptionally well at the high school ranks. They're going to have another high-rated class in 2027. The trick is, and this next transfer portal cycle will be very interesting to see how many of those guys can they retain. They've done a great job with retaining their recruits so far. Can they keep them on campus? We shall see. But we can't pretend that Alabama's portal misses aren't real. Losing out on top-tier portal guys that you should have been in the race for, Hollywood Smothers, Jacarius Peak, suggest to the fan base that Alabama's brand alone isn't enough anymore in this current portal arms race, right? Schools are willing to pay more aggressively, are getting the elite transfers. Alabama, it doesn't matter what your history is. It doesn't matter what your facilities look like. It doesn't matter who your head coach is. It doesn't matter if you spent $45 million on a roster and can't make the playoffs. It matters how much you can sling at a recruit in a bag. So, some compelling angles just to kind of consider, class potentials versus portal drama. The portal class has solid pieces, right? But there's plenty of question marks to be concerned going into 2026. There's question marks to be concerned and to be hopeful for. Right. I trust this staff in terms of eval because I've seen Josh Cuevas. I've seen Jeremy Bernard. I've seen Parker Brailsford. I saw Dijon Lee last year. I saw Michael Carroll. I saw London Simmons. I saw Latsier Brooks. I trust them to do evals. Is the approach going to work? Could those missed targets cost Alabama? Maybe. Maybe, the potential's there for sure. But in terms of skill position, missing out on like Cam Coleman or Hollywood Smothers, Alabama's got the running backs. They've got the wide receivers. Those aren't two guys that they absolutely had to have. You would have liked to have them, but they didn't have to have them. But along, I would have loved to see them go and get a better pass rusher, a more premier pass rusher with better numbers, be more aggressive in NIL there, and maybe along the offensive line as well. Not getting a guy like Jacarius Peak on campus was that was a whiff, man. That was a strike. So depth over class, over stars. Like, was this class built more to plug holes than push Alabama back into national title contention? I think Alabama has a roster that could compete for a national title in 2026. It is very young. It's very young. There's an argument that it may be too young to play for a national title, but that's because a roster full of 23 and 24-year-olds just won it. I think the goal was to rebuild. Kalen DeBoer down at senior day, he's pretty excited about the defensive line and the class that they brought in. Of course, he's not going to talk terrible about any of these kids, but he said he felt like they did replace some of the production. That remains to be seen. So if they're replacing the production or bringing a higher level production, it's no longer about plugging holes. I think offensively, Alabama is trying to not just plug holes along the offensive line. They're trying to build a cohesive unit that wants to be there, that wants to play football in Tuscaloosa, that is willing to work and be coachable under this new offensive line coach. So, no, it's not just about plugging holes, you know. All right. And how does this shape the 2026 expectations? Well, this is a new era of college football, right? With this class and the current roster turnover, what realistic goals should fans set for themselves? None right now. Let's just enjoy the offseason. Let's enjoy spring football. There's an off chance that Alabama maybe bring back its original A-Day game format. Summer workouts, recruiting, all that stuff is going to happen. So let's just enjoy the offseason as we get closer to the regular season. Let's see what it looks like against Eastern Carolina in week 1. Let's see what the progression looks like to week 2. Let's see who the starting quarterback is going to be. And maybe let's just support these guys. Overall, honestly, I think the staff did a solid job. I think they did an okay job. I think it's hard to determine how good of a job they did ultimately just because there's a ton of question marks. Now, we're going to sit with some beat writers for other schools like NC State and Ole Miss and Mississippi State to talk about these guys that are have seen them live and things like that over the coming weeks. So make sure that you're subscribed so you don't miss that. But I think the class is okay. Is it something to write home about? No. But I think they're going to be fine. I really do. I think this 2026 Alabama team might surprise some people. Are they going to go win a national title? I hope so, but is that realistic right now? No. I think we need to temper our expectations, not temper the standard, just our expectations moving forward. Let me know how you think in the comment section below. What player are you most excited about? Who do you think was the most valuable addition via the transfer portal? Comment their name below of this video. Make sure you give the video a big like, a big thumbs up, help the algorithm, tell your friends about us. Hey, also, if you are, if you have notifications on, do me a favor. If you follow the channel, go turn them off and then turn them right back on via YouTube. With some of these iPhone updates and stuff, some of you aren't getting the notifications, and that's why you just need to turn it off and turn it back on. Some of you may need to go into your settings and allow notifications via YouTube. Super simple to do. Just go into your settings, search the YouTube app, and click allow notifications. That's why some of you aren't getting notifications all of a sudden. So make sure you do that. You're welcome. That's IT Cotton coming out. Unplug it, plug it back up. So thanks for hanging out with me. Really cool interview last night with Trent Seaborn. About to upload that later today. So make sure you check that video out. As always, you guys know the drill. Say your prayers, read your Bibles, wash your hands, horns down, beat Auburn and LSU and Tennessee too. Roll Tide.